What is going on, everyone? Lauren Sisler here with AL.com. I got Mike Rodak on the horn today with AL.com, Alabama beat reporter, hanging out on this lovely Thursday as we kick off week 0 of the college football season. True story. Football is kicking off this week. Super excited about that. I will be in Montgomery for the first game, but nevertheless, we're talking Alabama football, and we're still a few weeks away from the SEC kicking things off. September 26th will be the first week of kickoff for Alabama. So we're in week 2 of Alabama's fall camp. And first and foremost, Mike, I just want to highlight sort of the recent findings and I guess the report that was posted on AL.com regarding COVID-19 testing among student athletes and the response to that became public records that AL.com requested. So just kind of go through some of that and what we've learned, about the testing protocols and sort of where the Alabama football team and the athletics kind of stand at this point in the tests that have been conducted thus far.
Yeah, it was a pretty ominous quote or report, really, on Sunday from the president of Alabama, Stuart Bell, who said that there had been an unacceptable rise in the amount of cases on campus among the general student population, and said it was a real threat for the semester to continue on campus. And, you've certainly heard other stories since then about converting residence halls into more isolation rooms. And it seems like what we saw in those pictures from 2 weeks ago at those bars and a lot of the crowds that had gathered and the subsequent fallout, with the mayor, that seemed to have led to more cases, shockingly. And so it's certainly a situation on campus where they had 500 new cases that was posted on their dashboard this week. With that said, the football team has been relatively unscathed throughout all of that. And Michael Casagrande from our AL.com here was able to report this week through a public records request that the positivity rate is still very, very low for the football team. And for all the tests that they've conducted, it's still 1% as of August 17th, which was last week or 10 days ago now. So that is the good news on a football standpoint. But if for some reason Alabama has to send students off campus for the rest of the semester, then you start getting into the question of, is it okay to still have the football players on campus while the rest of the students are not? And obviously that opens a can of worms as far as just college athletes and are they amateurs or should they be paid, et cetera. There's a whole list of questions that kind of follows from that. And that's obviously something they want to avoid. And for right now, it seems that they've avoided that. But the double-edged sword to the SEC pushing its season back to September 26 is, on the good end, is that, yeah, they get more time to kind of see how things unfold and to make decisions. But the bad thing is that they get more time. And as things keep happening, and there's still almost a month to go into football season, it gives a lot of time for things to get worse. And I think that's something people need to keep in mind. We still have a long way to go until the finish line, and the finish line is really the start of the season. And even then, things could happen after that. So nothing is really set in stone right now, I think, is the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think it's, a very fluid situation. And in talking to different coaches and just, administrators, staff members, anyone that's kind of involved in the football world, I think one of the biggest things is, and we can all say this, there is no blueprint. There's no book for how this thing goes. And it is fluid. There's a moment where we feel some positivity, like, oh, okay, things are moving forward. We're charging forward. And then on the flip side, then a lot of these other reports come out. Of course, the one being that the school reported having 531 positive tests, among students, faculty, and staff. That was as of August 29th through 23rd. August 19th through 23rd. So that obviously kind of being alarming because that's when classes resumed. And of course, you expect those numbers to increase. And I think the big question is, it looks like football is certainly containing their numbers. And I think that it just sort of stands on, everybody kind of making that sacrifice and doing what they need to stay confined and stay disciplined. So when they are, in the weight room, obviously in the locker room, out on the field, they're doing everything they can to keep their teammates and coaches and everyone else safe and healthy in that regard so that they can keep moving forward with their season. So I think that obviously is it's a moving target. So as you said, we've got a long ways to go till we get to September 26th. But yeah, week 2 of the season. So on, a player note, some big things happening, obviously being able to, we haven't been able to lay our eyes on practice per se, but of course the university is sitting down highlights for us to kind of watch, parts of practice, the early parts, mostly the stretching, of course, Mike, let's be real. The old hamstring stretch and, some of the sled pushes and whatnot. But with that being said, let's start on the offensive side of the football. If there's one or two guys that you could really pinpoint and say, hey, this person is looking trending in the right direction to potentially have an early impact, who would you pinpoint there?
I think Trey Sanders is one name, the running back who was a top 10 recruit last year, but ended up not playing because he got hurt in the preseason and really didn't do anything until December. I think it was when he got back to practice ahead of the Citrus Bowl. So really the first opportunity to see him won't be until the first game a month from now. And that's a full year and a half after he played his last high school game. And that's, it's a player who I think definitely contribute to the offense. We heard from Steve Sarkisian last week, the offensive coordinator, who was saying they want to take some of the workload off of Najee Harris, based on how much he played last year, and he was important to them, but they have a very deep running back group. And I think Trey Sanders has a very good chance to be that number 2 guy and to be someone who, contributes pretty heavily to the offense, and maybe swings the pendulum back away from the pass a little bit more. We saw a very pass heavy offense the last couple of years with Tua and the wide receivers that they have. The personnel is a little bit different now. And I think we can see Alabama go back to more of a run heavier scheme. With that said, another offensive player is Javon Baker. The freshman, as Matt Zenitz reported this week, has impressed some people. And that's a spot where they have their top 2 guys. We both know, that Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle will be the top 2, but who's the number 3 guy? And Baker's a freshman out of Powder Springs, Georgia, who can maybe squeeze his way in there a little bit.
All right. And then you shift gears over to the defensive side of the football. I'm hearing this name, Brian Branch, quite a bit. Tell me more about Brian Branch and what his expectations are for potentially leading that defense, early in his freshman campaign and having an opportunity to really make some moves there.
Yeah, definitely a guy who there's been a lot of buzz around him since he came onto campus. And, they have a lot of openings in that secondary just based on the players that they lost this past offseason, and Shaheem Carter being one of them, who was their starting star last year in the slot. Branch is a safety, technically. That's where he played in high school, but he also played a whole lot of other positions. Played wide receiver, played cornerback, played special teams. And for right now, it seems like his best opportunity to be on the field could be at star, and that he could be the starting star as a freshman. And, you hear the comparisons. He's heard the comparisons to Minkah Fitzpatrick when he came on campus, another player who could have gone to safety, could have gone to corner, can do both, still does both in the NFL, and then really contributed heavily as a freshman. So that is a name that's come up in comparison to him. I talked to his mom. I talked to his trainer, back in Atlanta last week about him. And, he's a player who, he's been through a lot personally. His mom separated from her husband, his father, when he was very young, and his father ended up passing away earlier this year. And he sees himself as playing for his father. And that's part of the story on him, but also just, he's needed a father figure over the years. And that's kind of where his trainer came in and keeping him on track academically. And at this point, trying to keep him grounded as he realizes he's, becoming something at Alabama, just trying to keep him on level footing at that point.
Love that. Obviously a great story there, and just someone that we look forward to sort of watching, but, a lot of moving parts, a lot of unknowns right now. We're only in week 2. So, a lot can happen here in the next few weeks, and certainly as things start to come together. And you got to keep in mind, like, these guys, they have not been together, working together in the off season, right? So there's not a lot of information for us to kind of go off of in terms of what's happening behind closed doors and sort of the guys that are really kind of rising to the top. So it'll certainly be interesting, I think, in this next week or two as things start to shape up and we learn more about each player. Last question for you, Mike. Alabama, number one now in the recruiting rankings. And you got to think about this in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't too long ago. I guess it was early May that Alabama was ranked 57th. So we're just a few months removed from that. And now they're already up in the number one spot. And, I think there was some questions and concerns. And, why is Alabama literally ranked 57th in the nation? And now they're number one. So, give us kind of an illustration of how Alabama arrived at this number one spot here as we enter into, September.
Yeah, I talked to Tom Luganbill at ESPN back in May about that, and he wasn't concerned. He said that he actually thought Alabama was intentionally holding off, thinking essentially if nobody could recruit and they couldn't at that point, and they really still can't because of a lot of the restrictions in place, and they might as well just sit back, watch more film, and try to get a better evaluation of all these players and make sure that they're right on the players. And at this point, they've been able to bring in several top 10, top 20 prospects, and there's some parallels to the 2017 recruiting class, and that was a very good one for Alabama that brought in both their offensive tackles for the last few years, and Jedrick Wills and Alex Leatherwood also brought in 3 very good receivers, and Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, and Devontae Smith. Similar things here where they're bringing in 2 top 10 tackles, and James Brockemeyer and J.C. Latham, and then 3 wide receivers as well in the top 70, I believe, and 2 of them from Florida, where they've had a lot of success at that position. So just restocking the positions where they're going to lose players or have lost players to the NFL, and just kind of keeping the train rolling, I think is the bottom line of this class. And, it didn't look like it was going to be this way a few months ago, but here they are.
Awesome. Good stuff. I want to point out Miss Pam Award on here. She said, can't wait for some Alabama football and some boiled peanuts. I don't know about you, Mike. Are you a boiled peanuts fan?
I had them, I think my first trip to Atlanta several years ago, and they were good. I just haven't had a chance to eat them since. So if anybody wants to ship some boiled peanuts along, I wouldn't mind eating them.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, that was not a thing for me either. I was not all about boiled peanuts. I don't love peanuts, but then you put them inside of an M&M, they become a little bit tastier, a little bit better, right? Well, then we have the Alabama peanut. You guys down in Birmingham, I really wish I knew the name of this place, and I'm going to end up getting in trouble for not knowing. But there's this place right around the corner from the offices at AL.com. Of course, we've been working from home, so haven't been down there. But apparently they have a rotating menu of these like boiled peanuts, and it's like 2 or 3 flavors a day. It's like the Wickles pickles and like some sriracha stuff and, all this crazy flavor. So I definitely am about that boiled peanut life if I can get my hands on some of those yummy, tasty flavors. Anyways, little sidebar. Just thought I'd go there. I don't know. Anyways, thanks so much, Mike. Appreciate you. Appreciate your insight. And of course, we'll check back in for more on the Alabama Crimson Tide with you guys soon.